I'll let people trickle in. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. All right, so I'm going to read my spiel to you first, and then we'll get started with Jessica and Julie. So welcome to How to Create a Culture of Reflective Practice with Jessica Vance and Julie Haney. My name is Christina Reiser, and I am your session support today. Please notice the words R13 in front of my name. Hopefully this will help you find me if you need assistance during the session. Just message me with any tech problems that you may have, hopefully not, or any conference related questions. Without further ado, I present Jessica and Julie. I'll let y'all take it from here.
Thank you, Christina. Good morning, everyone. Hi, Lacey. I see a few other familiar faces. So good morning. Thank you guys for jumping in with us this morning after the keynote. Julie and I are really excited to be here. I know I was here presenting last year on something totally unrelated, but I'm really excited to be able to co-present with her. As Christina said, my name is Jessica Vance. My title, the role that I currently hold, is Enrichment Environment Coordinator at an elementary campus in Round Rock ISD. And Julie Haney, although I don't currently get the opportunity to work with her on the same campus anymore, she is an assistant principal at Cedar Ridge High School in Round Rock, and she's going to be running the back end of things. And for those of you who know me, you know that I love good questions. I love any kind of questions. So please feel free to throw those into the chat throughout the session today. If there's things you kind of want us to make sure that we stop and slow down on, I'm totally giving the session over to you and having you be agents over your own learning. So if we need to stop and pause and kind of switch gears, please let us know. We have lots of different resources that we'll be sharing with you as we talk about how to create that culture of reflective practice. So stay tuned to those. Julie will be throwing them into the chat, and we also have a website too that's packed full with a lot of different resources for you for today, but also kind of continuing moving forward. So we are really excited, like I said before, to be here with you today. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so I wanted to start with an intention. It's something that I do as part of my daily practice, just as I'm greeting the morning. And so when Julie and I were preparing for you guys today, we were thinking about what's the intention for our purpose here today, and we wanted to share that with you. And like the slide says, it's to basically provide or share a different way and approach and framework and structure in regards to leadership and to be able to cultivate that reflective practice. Those of you here, whether you're an instructional coach or some other sort of leader, you know that reflection is part of how we all help those that we lead grow. And so we're hoping that today we perhaps maybe shift your thinking about different ways to be able to approach that practice. So I want to give you just a few moments to have you perhaps just take a deep breath yourself. What's the intention that you're setting for yourself today in this session? Perhaps when you registered for this conference, you had that intention already set. Perhaps this morning you want to invite that in, or maybe it's something else that you need. What drew you to our session? Thank you again for those of you who are here. Maybe there's a word or a phrase. So if you take whatever you have, just jot down that word, jot down that phrase. I'm going to give you a few moments just to kind of center yourself here today. And I would say there's no wrong intention. So whatever first word comes up, write it down. Okay, we are going to get started with that intention in mind. We're going to do a little bit of tuning in. Those of you who are familiar with IB, and I see, like I said, a few familiar faces, and so you might be familiar with inquiry as well in the inquiry cycle. Whether or not you are, we'll be unpacking that with you today, but we're going to tune into your own thinking. So this is a visible thinking routine called 3-2-1 Bridge. We're just going to be doing a part of it with you today since our time is a little bit more limited. But when you think about the concept of reflection, whatever you have in front of you or however you're taking notes today, what are 3 words that come to mind? So if you jot those down for me, or for yourself, I should say. 3 words that come to mind when you think about reflection. for those of you who are ready, what 2 questions did you have about reflection, or do you have about reflection? Maybe it's something related to the title of this session. Maybe those of you who are new to the role of coaching, it's something a little bit newer to you. Maybe there's challenges that you have in the way that you coach and mentor and lead other teachers that you want to jot down some of your questions in regards to reflection related to that. I see some of you already sharing with me. You know where I'm going with this, so thank you. And lastly, an analogy. So reflection is, or reflection is like, or a simile or a metaphor. And I will say that this tends to be the more challenging one. So if your brain's not quite fired up yet, that's totally okay. I wanted to just let you know that's fine. But if you can think of some sort of reflection, an analogy as it relates to reflection, and whatever you're willing to share with us into the chat, we'd love to be able to see it. Even if it's just a word, like some of you have already messaged me, or those 3 words that came to mind, or if some of you are feeling brave enough and want to throw in your questions, that would be great as well.
That's ours.
Okay, I'll give you another 30 seconds or so to jot down your initial thinking as it relates to reflection. Thank you, Jennifer. How do you get people to reflect when they do not think they need to grow or change? Hopefully, I'll be able to give you something for today on that. Thank you, Tom. Growth, I see improvement, change. Reflection is growth, yes. Yes, thank you. Ooh, Lacey, my favorite thing ever, questioning. We have a lot of resources about questioning, and I can go on about it. That's what I presented on last year. So happy to continue the conversation after today. Awesome, these are great. Thank you, everyone. Awesome. Keep throwing those in here. But I want to share a story with you this morning. So Julie, you'll go to that next slide for us, please. So I want to orient you a little bit more into Julie and I. So obviously I shared our current roles, but we used to work together at a school that was an elementary school. And I want to share a little bit about the school to kind of give you a time and place of how we came up with this approach and the way that it really transformed the way that we lead our teachers currently now in our different roles, and also the transformation that happened on the campus in which we served at that time. So you see here a series of different photos that just kind of illustrate a couple of the different things at the school that we worked at valued. We worked at a school that valued an inquiry-based approach to teaching and learning. It valued questioning, it valued curiosity. It really put the students in the center of the learning, which is not always easy, because I know as teachers, we always have all these different expectations, even as leaders, right? And so what we really did is we worked with our teachers to show them the value and what happens when you take an inquiry-based approach to teaching and learning, and the transformation that happens in the classroom. So you see some students on the slide here that were playing with some different materials. You see a list of questions and some students researching. And so all of those things really do is they just show what it was that we were doing at that school. We were there for about 5 years, and each year we had different types of goals that we were working on with one another, with our teachers, and really putting them as our learners as well. And so the growth and change and things that were happening with themselves as professionals were seen in the kids themselves and the transformation that happened. And so we were so excited at the end of each school year to celebrate the learning that happened, to celebrate the growth and change within our educators. And we always ended the year with a reflection. And we would gather questions and just the end of the year reflections. And so we would take those as we were moving forward to plan for the next school year. So fast forward to July, it was about this time. Julie, if you want to go to that next slide. we sat down with those reflections and we had their questions, and we were really excited to be able to take those and move forward in the upcoming year. Everybody knows, and I'm sure some of you are feeling it now, you know, the excitement of a new year, the new opportunities that it brings. And so we were really excited to be able to welcome our teachers. So we sat down, we had these lists of reflections and questions, and then our principal gave us the list of nuts and bolts and expectations from the district, which those of you who have made it back into your campuses or schools or wherever it is that you work, you probably have begun to see that list. I know even now in my role, I've started to see that list as well. And one of the things that really drove home to us in that July was that the excitement that we felt once we got that list of nuts and bolts literally drained. None of the celebrations, none of the amazing opportunities that we were able to witness with our teachers and our students were evident anymore, because all we had was this list, this checklist of things that we had to do. And we were the very people who were responsible for delivering this professional development. So how could we, the people who were motivating and inspiring change and doing these really great pieces of work with our teachers, now go back to this list and have to start the school year with looking at data, or start the school year at looking at some new curriculum that the district was sharing with us, or start the school year with those modules of training that we all know that we have to engage in. And so although our feelings totally changed, and although the excitement shifted, what then happened for Julie and I is we sat there together and we said, okay, if we are the leaders and we are trying to promote change and we're trying to inspire our teachers, what are the different ways that we can stop and pause, and how can we reflect on our approach? We all know we probably have the things that we are always doing from year to year. We probably have the things that are on our list, and we just do them because it's just what we've always done. So this was a great opportunity for us to kind of stop and pause and rethink about how are we as leaders embodying the very systems and actions that we want our teachers to be doing inside of our classrooms. So fortunately, we had an amazing principal, although she gave us that list because she had to. She let us go, and she let us be able to explore an approach that would be a little bit different. So the quote that is up here, or the question that is up here, is, would you want to be a learner in your own classroom? This was actually a question that we had in our office. We always had a lot of different things and visuals in our office space to be able to document the learning that was going on and the learning that was unfolding. But also, it was kind of our secret that we would take questions from authors that we were respected, or just inspiring quotes of things, and we would place them in different places in our office, because we knew, and we've all been there before, how many of you have been in a meeting and then like zoned out, and then you start like looking around the room. And so Julie and I thought, well, if they're gonna not pay attention, shouldn't they be looking at something that's like super inspirational? And so we had this one question tucked away in this small little corner, and it was actually one question that really spoke to a lot of our teachers, and a lot of them throughout the year would say like, hey, I keep seeing that question up there, and it makes me continue to think about what am I doing and how I'm approaching my teaching practice. So because we had gotten that feedback, we said, okay, would you want to be a learner in your own classroom? How can we transform professional development, transform the way that we're approaching the adult learning with our teachers, so that way they're excited to be in our classrooms, so to speak. So with that said came something called the Amazing Maker Race. We knew our teachers really well. We had spent that time, as we all know as leaders, building that relationship, whether it be, you know, down in the hallways, or as teachers were greeting us in the morning, or just in the time that we spent with them during coaching or planning sessions. So we knew that they loved a good competition. And although I'm not competitive, we knew this about our learners, and so we knew it was something that we had to incorporate. So we came up with something called the Amazing Maker Race. And what it was a series of stations around the building, and the teachers were able to explore some different resources, which I'll go to in a minute. But just as I've done with you today when we started our session, we knew we had to tune into our teachers' thinking of where they were in regards to Maker Race and innovation and making and creating, and that creativity speak, so to speak. And so we used a visible thinking routine. Again, as I've kind of mentioned, they, to me, are pure gold. So those of you who are not aware of Mark Church and Ron Richard's work, I definitely highly suggest that you go seek out their work. But we had our teachers document their initial thinking about makerspace and creativity. At the time, makerspace was a little bit newer, and so it was something that was not really familiar with a lot of our teachers. And so we wanted them just to document their initial thinking about makerspace. So they took sticky notes, we had anchor charts around the room, and they documented their initial thinking, which we later would use to kind of launch some other reflections and conversations. And then we let our teachers go. We gave them some parameters of time. We had them go around the school exploring different stations. Some of them were tech related based on the questions that they had thrown out to us back in the spring, challenges that we noticed that they were having inside of their classrooms. We had some sketch noting stations out there for some district curriculum. So even though this was our must do, this was the thing that we had to do, we were able to infuse a little bit more creativity so that our teachers could feel inspired and feel connected and explore a different medium in regards to that must do or that that district expectation. We also had some green screen in there, so there's some different tech tools that our teachers were exploring. We had some maker challenges, and basically we wanted our teachers to have fun. We wanted to set the tone on day one. What was it that we valued? We valued their voice, we valued relationships, and we valued that curiosity. Those same things that we valued, or we were talking and exploring in regards to what we valued in the classroom with our students, was the very same thing that we valued with them as our learners. So we infused all of those values within each of the different stations. You can also see that we had a tweet deck. We wanted our teachers to celebrate and explore their learning. And so some of our teachers, created Twitter accounts just that day. We created a campus hashtag, and it was a really great way for us to continue to connect with each other, even though we were spread across the building for an entire day. So while the teachers were engaging in all of these different stations, what were Julie and I doing? What were our roles in facilitating their own inquiry? We were listening. We were not yet, Julie, go back. We were listening. We were documenting notes. And I'd like to highlight that the way we were documenting notes was not anecdotal necessarily, but it was what question are our learners asking as they're engaging and working with one another. So we documented our notes in that way. We also just wrote down some different things that we were noticing, just observations. If teachers were coming up to us, Julie at the time, by the way, was the technology specialist on the campus. So anything tech related, it was their like default to go ask her, well, how do I do this? And one of the things that I've learned from her, and those of you who ask questions about questions, this is like the be all end all, and the easiest one to start with is we would answer their question with another question. So I'll give this one example. If somebody says, well, this is not working, I learned this from Julie, who's a great mentor in that way. And she would always say, well, what's not working about it? Providing an invitation for whoever's asking the question to be able to stop and pause a little bit more. And it also provides those who are answering the question a little bit more time to step back and not necessarily go in and answer the thing that's not working about it or provide that answer right away, which I know is really hard. And I know even as coaches, when we're walking in rooms and we see things that we know is not right and needs to be corrected, that's not really the best approach. We know that in order for true constructivism and best practice, that the owner needs to construct their own meaning. And how do they do that is that they have that personal experience and they have that their own opportunity to be able to reflect on that. So next slide, Julie. So as our teacher, I call them students, right? Because that's how I think of them. As our teachers were engaging in all these different stations, the excitement literally was just so contagious. It was so exciting after a whole summer of everybody feeling so rested and refreshed to be able to jump in the school year and have some fun together, to be able to catapult, if you will, the learning that was going to happen that year. So after they engaged in those different stations, we invited them back into the library and we had them reflect, because that is the cornerstone of what inquiry is. It allows the learner to be able to make those personal connections to be able to see some different perspectives and just really synthesize the learning. So you see here just a couple of photos of our teachers reflecting and making some different connections to a book study that we were exploring together and some different infographics. But we really gave them time to reflect on the learning, to go back to their initial thinking with that visible thinking routine and be able to say, how has my thinking changed? Where have I come in regards to the last couple of hours? Now, what am I thinking? Now, what should I do? What goals do I want to set for myself? And so we were really working hard to instill the very values, like I said before, that we wanted our teachers to infuse into the classroom with them as learners and honoring their space and their agency. And so with their reflections, we literally took them, lifted them off of the table and took them back into our office and made them visible and really infused what they said and their experiences throughout all of our interactions with them for the rest of the year. So that was a very long-winded, and I get so excited. You see, every time I say the story, it never gets old because it literally was the most fun. But that's just one example and one way that, or how PD looked like for us when we facilitated it together. And to be honest, it's the very thing that I continue to do in my current role on my current campus as well. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I know I've made a few mentions about inquiry, and I know a lot of us are coming from different places and spaces, so please feel free to throw different questions into the chat. If you have, okay, Kim, you're saying, what are some guiding questions to help teachers reflect? I do have some for you, so let me hang on to that one, and then if I haven't answered those, I'll circle back to that. I'll make sure. So again, just to kind of reorient ourselves in regards to inquiry. Those of you who are familiar with inquiry, Kath Murdoch is an inquiry author, and this is just a quote from one of her books. She's definitely a guru when it comes to inquiry. She has an amazing blog that when I dived into the world of inquiry, I just could not get enough of the things that she shared and the way that she helped me pause and reflect on my own practice as a teacher. I started in the classroom as an inquiry teacher about 5 years into my career. And I haven't looked back ever since. But one of the things that I wanted to point out in regards to the quote that we're sharing with you today, and some of you may have already see it, is about the reflection piece. And that really inquiry, in order for it to be meaningful to the learner, needs that opportunity for reflection. And so in the inquiry cycle that we're going to show you next. Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead. Never mind. Back up for a second. Another inquiry practitioner that I wanted to share with you today is Trevor McKenzie. Some of you probably are aware of his work and the impact that he is making on the inquiry community. We put their social media handles on there, and actually even at the end of our session today, we have a litany of people for you to be able to begin to explore, or if you're a little bit more further into your practice, taking a look at the different resources that they have to offer. This literally drives every single thing that I do, and I cannot imagine leading without inquiry in the same way that I did as a classroom teacher, although my lens is a little bit different. The same practices that I infused as a teacher are the same ones that I do as a leader, and I'm really passionate about them being the same, because that's what inquiry is. It has all the same characteristics. It just depends on the lens in which you lead and the role in which you're fulfilling. So now the next one. Thank you, Julie. All right, so this is an inquiry cycle. If you even on a sidebar or on a side tab type in inquiry cycle, you'll see a bunch of them show up. So there's not one right one. And again, you're gonna find one that works best for you. The one that I'm sharing with you today, I personally like because I love the messiness of it. And all of us know that learning is not neat. It's not this cute little perfect cycle that goes round and round and round. And that's just not how learning really is. And so I love that the author of this cycle, she almost illustrates like a paint palette. And so with learning, sometimes we need a little bit of more of one color if you want than another. But what I love in regards to this structure is that it has the reflection in the middle. It has all of the arrows all over the places. But the main point for those of you who are new to inquiry is that inquiry really just is a framework for learning. It helps, it's a framework for exploration. It's a framework for investigation, and it really just puts the learner at the center. And I keep going back to that, and I keep saying that because that really is the pinnacle part about inquiry and why it's really important and why I believe so heartily in it as an approach to teaching and learning in the classroom, and also why I feel like it's best approach in regards to the way that we're leading. All right, so that is the framework that we use, which we will share how we took this framework and transformed our professional development. We have created some different resource documents for you to begin to start shifting the way that perhaps you're approaching your leadership or professional development, and be able to infuse a lot of that reflection. This is an infographic or a sketch note, I'm sorry, from one of Trevor McKenzie's books about an inquiry teacher. And although there's lots of things to explore on this sketch, and we could spend like a whole session on this, one of the things that I wanted to point out is that little arrow that's kind of going into a circle. It says that inquiry teachers reflect and revise as they go. So just as an inquiry teacher, a teacher who practices inquiry in the classroom is continuously reflecting and revising as they go, meaning they're listening to their learners, they know their learners, they're taking their learners' questions, the things that they're passionate about and the things that they're interested in, and infusing in that into their practice. That is the same thing in regards to the way that we need to be approaching our roles as leaders as well. All right, so the question, how do we cultivate spaces of reflection? Now, before we dive into the next slide, one of the things that I do want to mention is that, like that image of the inquiry cycle, it's not just this one thing that we do, right? It's going to be the collection of experiences and interactions and events and opportunities that help cultivate those spaces. Again, those of you who are leaders or coaches, you know that you don't build a relationship overnight. You know it's something that takes time and energy and intention. And the same thing goes into regards to cultivating those spaces of reflection. There's an image of a garden here just to kind of help orient yourself as well. I'm not a gardener, for the record, but I do know that you do need to be intentional when you're growing. My husband is, he is the green thumb in our house. Intentional when you are planting those seeds and you're monitoring the soil and you're taking a look at the temperature and you're watering it and you're seeing what kind of nutrients are needed. So all these different small acts help cultivate, right, in this like image, these beautiful tomato plants. So keeping that in mind as we're cultivating these spaces of reflection, it's not going to be the one act, but the accumulation of all the different things that we're doing each and every day in our approach, in our language, and the ways that we are working with our teachers. All right, so I have a sketch for you, and I can throw it into the chat. Feel free to, those of you who, sorry, I can't do two things at once, 1 second. We also will have this on our website as well, so if you don't grab it here, but those of you who wanted to kind of digitally make some notes on here. Excuse me, we space. So like ourselves as partners in learning. And the 4 different qualities that we have listed here are ones that Julie and I graded opportunities with our teachers at the elementary school, and they're ones that I continue to practice today. And so as leaders, how do we provoke the thinking within the teachers that we're leading? So what does that mean when I'm saying provoke? For those of you who are not aware of probably a little bit newer language to you, you're trying to tune and make it an active learning process. And so that could come in the way of, oh no, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes? Am I still frozen?
It was a little unstable. Let's see.
Okay.
I think maybe it's
Got it.
better now. Let's see.
Okay. Okay. Let me start. So I don't know where it got glitchy. I'm assuming right when I started with provocations.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate it. All right, so provocation, it's a way for us to be active in our learning, right? So we want to promote some sort of thinking. And the way that you do that is, or there's a lot of different ways, and I know that there's a lot of power in questions, like I mentioned when we first started this session, but also I believe that provocations are a super powerful tool that is one that is perhaps underutilized. And so provocations are here in regards to, like, you could show a video. Julie and I've showed different like news headline articles. We've read different articles with our teachers. Obviously, I showed you one in the beginning of the session very briefly. The questions that we put around our office, those were provocations, although it was not in a formal PD session. We were trying to provoke some type of thinking and a way of being with our teachers, right? So provocations are a great way in which to start to get that active learning. During our Amazing Maker race, I know I only showed you the visible thinking routine, but we had a short little video clip for them just to kind of tune in a little bit and give them a little bit more background, because we had teachers who had been teaching for 20 plus years and some who were brand new to profession. We wanted to be able to give them something that had a common language and be able for us to build off of. So provocations are super powerful. So I'd say that. The second one, and you know what, let me back up actually a little bit before I move on. If when you're looking at this list, you might be asking or saying to yourself, well, Jessica, I do this, this, and this, or I've seen this, this, and this. What I'd like you to do is I kind of want to challenge you today and think about adding in that lens of inquiry for yourself. And if you do these things, how do you know you do them? And what is the impact of the way in which you do them? So anyways, so just to kind of like put another extra layer in there, sorry to kind of stop and pause there, but I feel like that's important to note because some of these you probably have seen before. So let's see here. Got it, okay. So the second one is collaboration. And again, this is the one that made me stop and pause and kind of back up a little bit. So we know what it means to collaborate, but what I would like to challenge you to think about and consider is, do you or do your teachers collaborate or do they cooperate? And John Spencer has a really amazing video that I often show as a provocation when I'm working with people who are new to leadership, or I have teachers who are new to my campus. That's one of the videos that I like to show because I want to have an in-depth conversation about what does it mean to collaborate versus cooperate, and are we really collaborating? And I've seen a really big difference on the campus that I'm on this year. Inquiry is newer to the campus, and when I brought up this question, they said, yeah, Jessica, we totally collaborate. And then when I showed them the video, they were like, oh, actually, we just really like each other and we cooperate, but we really don't have those hard conversations. We really don't push each other and ask each other those hard questions. So that was a really a great aha moment a couple of years ago when I talked about it with my current staff. But in regards to the Amazing Makerspace PD that I shared with you, the story that I shared with you, how did we have, or how did we show or model or have our teachers experience that that idea of collaboration? Well, obviously we were intentional with the groups that we put them in, right? We wanted them to connect with their teams again. We wanted them to have fun and not have it always be things related to the classroom and curriculum and assessments. And although that is our work and that's the things that we love, we also wanted them to be able to collaborate in a way that was definitely different. I shared with you how we utilize social media. And again, Julie, thank you so much. She totally changed my thinking about the power of Twitter and social media and those professional learning networks. Brittany, yes, Julie, if you can find that video or make a note of it, I'll make sure that I throw it on there as well. So we utilized Twitter as a way for the learning to be shared that day. So there was that collaborative effort that was happening that day. So our teachers could follow each other on a hashtag. They could kind of see what the other groups were doing. They could get ideas from each other, even if they weren't in the same group, because they were able to follow each other on that hashtag. And then also what it did was it created a great collaborative virtual space for our teachers to continue to be connected with each other. And we constantly referred to the different things that we saw online in the classrooms, and Julie and I would share, and we would tweet them out and use our campus hashtag and tag one another. And so it brought in this different lens and a different way that we could collaborate together as a learning community that was not limited to that day or the four walls or whatever space that we were in. And another way that we utilized collaboration would be some video responses and Flipgrids. I know I briefly mentioned that we were doing a book study. And so that was a really powerful tool for us to be able to continue that collaboration. And again, all of these different tools, we were using them with our learners, but our teachers could use them with their students too. So anything that we tried with our teachers, they were able to do on their own. And so it was just a great way for them to be able to experience it as a learner and then feel a little bit more confident later when they were in their classrooms. All right, my favorite, reflective questions. So reflective questions, one of the tools that I shared with you or before and I've mentioned several different times are the visible thinking routines or Making Thinking Visible by Ron Richard and Mark Church. They have 2 books now. And so I definitely would recommend you grabbing those if you have not already. There is a lot of great resources, even free online, but those were a great way for us to be able to model the type of thinking and slow down the learning in order for our teachers to know that it's okay to not always know the answer. Another great one is What Do You See, When Do You Wonder, and What Do You Know? This one is one from Trevor McKenzie that he uses time and time again. I know it's very similar to See, Think, Wonder, but I will share with you something he shared with me that I thought was really powerful. So with See, Think, Wonder, we've seen that a lot. I know probably everybody here is like nodding their heads. Yes, I've used that before. Have you seen it in practice? But what I loved his spin for See, Wonder, Know is that what do you see is very easy. It kind of levels the playing field. What are some questions that you have, right? So that's putting the value of questions first. And then what do you know later? Like, it's okay that you don't know anything. That's totally fine. But I loved that shift in putting questions second to be able to show again what it is that we value. We value curiosity. We value wanting to know what it is that is interesting to you, what things are standing out to you. So I thought that was a really great one. In regards to reflective questioning, again, Julie shared with me like answering a question with another question. And it definitely just takes a little bit of practice, but it's really not that hard. And what I will say is teachers time and time again would always tell us that they know when they came to us that we would ask them another question and they would feel inspired to continue their thinking. So although initially you think that it's going to frustrate that person, obviously your tone and the way that you're naturally just curious about what they're going to share with you has an impact with how they respond. And then in regards to those reflective questions, there were ones that we always went back to and connected to teacher, team related goals. And so questions really were everywhere in our office. It was something that we always went back to. And the last thing, and again, I've kind of already touched on this as well, is making the learning visible. We use digital tools, like I've mentioned, Twitter. We would definitely use Padlet, Flipgrid also I've mentioned, but the learning wall. And I want to highlight this because I feel like it was super powerful for us to lift up the things that were being explored, the things that matter to our teachers, where their learning was, and we made it visible in our office. So really it was full of anchor charts and full of sticky notes and those visible thinking routines. We had an ideal wall of stuff that we were throwing up there. And so we were making our teachers, our teachers, which are our learners, learning visible, but it was also a great reminder for us because what did it do? It reminded us to put them at the center of everything that we did. And so even though we had the pressure of that list that we got from our principal, because our learners were visible in our space, it always shifted us back to what it was that we knew that we had to do in order to best serve them. So I've shared with you 4 different strategies and ways that as a leader, you can help your teachers be reflective. But I'm not going to change the slide as I share with you 4 different strategies for you as a leader to build your own reflective practice. Because just like anything, if we want our learners to do something or to be or have certain dispositions, then we need to be modeling it ourselves. So I'm going to keep the same 4 qualities up here, but the way in which or the shift in which perhaps you can reflect on your own reflective practice will look a little bit different. So again, we're our partners in learning, right? This applies to you as the leader as you engage in all of the different reflective activities. In regards to provocation, I would ask you, what gets you fired up as a leader? What gets you excited? Maybe it's reading a new book. Maybe it's connecting with somebody on Twitter. Maybe it's those informal learning walks when we're in our classrooms. Maybe it's talking to students. All of these things we do each and every single day because those provoke our thinking, they provoke our questions, but they also remind our learners that we are there with them. We're not sitting back behind a desk trying to tell them what to do. We are practicing what we preach. We are in the learning with them because we're learners ourselves. We are learners ourselves. Collaboration, again, agency. We connect with other leaders. We collaborate with each other. You are all here today engaging in the chat, and it's so hard for me to keep up with it, but I love what I'm seeing because it's what helps us get better. You know, one of the things that Julie and I, even though we're not on the same campus anymore, we continue to call each other and jump on a chat or send each other messages here or there because we know we're going to continue to push each other's thinking and push each other's boundaries. And so we want to do that because we want to continue to collaborate and be able to have that lens and be able to provide different perspectives that are maybe our initial thinking didn't go to that place. Collaboration also means that we're sitting in the learning with our learners, like I've already mentioned. We're not telling them what to do. We're lifting up their voice with the different questions. You're listening to what it is that they need and how does it align with the different vision or mission of your campus. Reflective questions, very similarly. You find your person, you reflect with them. I shared with Julie as one of my people, even though we're not together anymore. And one of these a quote that she shared with me most recently from Principal Kafele. So if you're not following him, he has a book that just came out and some great content that he always shares on social media. But one of his questions was, and I love this. So this might be one actually I put up in my office this year. It says, are my students at an advantage because they attend my school? I love it. I'll say it one more time. Are my students at an advantage because they attend my school? And so for me as a leader, I reflect and say, are my teachers at an advantage because they attend my school and they're sitting with me? And I can't, how could you not want to put your learners or your teachers first with a question like that? How could we not want to give our teachers agency over their learning and what's important to them? If anything that we've learned, of course, a lot of lessons with COVID, what has been most important? Relationships. Beyond anything, it's the thing that we miss the most, relationships. It's the thing that we knew that just sitting with our kids or sitting with one another, even if it was the screen away, was so important. And it was the thing that we missed the most. And so relationships are key. Relationships are number one. All righty. I know I've talked a lot and I want to get you guys to be able to do a little bit of work to share and possibly rethink some of the ways that you're approaching the start of the school year. There's a lot of words on this slide, but we included this here because as we're preparing for this event, Julie and I were doing reflecting as we do, and we said, okay, so what? We did this thing, we loved it, we had a great time, we saw transformation on the campus, but so what? Why is it important? And it's important because our learners told us that. So here is just a collection of some of their reflections over the years that we were with them. And actually, I reached out to teachers a couple of months ago and asked them, hey, can you share with me? I'm just so curious. Tell me about the things that we did with you. Why did you try hard things? Why did you sit with me? And why did you take those nudges? And so these are just some of their words. And to me, like, it brings a tear to my eye because this is my why. I'm here for them. They are my why. So you can kind of see here. And again, on our website, we'll throw our slide deck so you can be able to kind of take a look at that. But they saw that we valued them. They saw that we saw them as people first before teachers. And so that literally speaks so loudly to me, and it continues to drive me and what I'm doing, and it's definitely connected to that Principal Kafele quote. Alrighty, no more teary eyes. So, all right, so how does this work? I'm sure some of you are like, okay, Jessica, this is great. You did these things, all these great things happen. I'm excited, right? So how does this actually work? So I explained what the Mason Maker Race is, and I'm going to, here's me trying to do two things at once. Please tell me if you guys can't hear me when I share this doc, okay? Because that's where the problem happened last time. I'm going to share the structure that we used. So when we started, or when I was starting to dig into inquiry, can you guys still hear me? Yes, okay, good. I was showing you that framework, right? And we know learning's not perfect, but what was really great and what was really transformative was when Julie and I started using the framework that I've dropped into the chat to redesign our professional development. We saw that we started to lead with a lens of inquiry. And so it shifted our whole approach with how we were engaging with our learners. And so there is a Google Doc in there that literally takes what we did, how do we ask them, what learning experiences. There's a couple of different sentence stems and prompts in there for you. Because we wanted to give you guys an opportunity today. So hopefully you'll play along, or if you have questions, we can totally engage in that way. But to think about, as we're all stepping into our campuses this year, and we are all moving forward. You can go back, Julie, hold on. Oh, never mind, it's okay, that's okay. With professional development, how can you reflect as a leader and change your approach in the way that you are engaging in professional development with your learners? How can you lead with a lens of inquiry, lead with that curiosity, put your learners or your teachers in the center, and redesign or restructure the way in which you approach professional development? Now, it doesn't mean that you throw out everything that you did, because there by no means is not what we're suggesting, but how can you restructure and refocus the way that you are approaching professional development to be able to show your students or your teachers that you're sitting in with them in the learning, and that you're curious about the things that they are curious about. The same way that our teachers have their standards, right? We say, okay, these are the standards of the thing that we had to do. It was what Julie and I did. It was how we coached. It was how we worked with them. But just because that's the standard doesn't mean that's the only thing that you can do. How can you redesign and shift your thinking? So with that, it is almost 11 o'clock. And so we wanted to give you guys time to be able to work and start to brainstorm and think about some different ideas. So I'm going to give you this time. And I know it might be tempting for some of you guys to log off, which is totally fine, or you want to go grab your cup of coffee, but think back to that intention. What intention did you have when you jumped into this call today? What did you want to cultivate during this time together? What did you want to bring to yourself? So if that helps you stay and even ask some questions, I'd love for you to hang out with us. Julie and I will be here to answer some questions, or Julie, if you want to lift some of them up. In the chat, I'm going to throw a template that will help you start to reflect on your process. Now, you might be in a place where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start, where to begin. That's totally okay. In true inquiry fashion, I have a couple of reflective questions for you to be able to help guide and possibly shift your thinking. And then I'm also going to throw into the chat another inquiry framework, but this is for a team meeting. So not only did I want to provide it, or we wanted to provide an example for you, like in a bigger PD event, we also recognize that not all of you have that time with your teachers in that way. And so how could you still do this and utilize this framework in this thinking in a smaller space? So I'm going to throw that in there as well. And then Julie, would you like to lift some questions up? Or if some of you guys want to come off mute, I am totally flexible with how we utilize the rest of our time today. See. Okay, there's the other sample. Let's see. The top 3 reflective questions. Okay. Oh, that's from Julie. Never mind. That was from somebody else. Let's see. Thank you, Jennifer. I'm going to go back up a little bit more to see if there's some other questions, but feel free to throw questions in the chat. Like I said, they are my favorite. Lacey, I know I keep calling you out, but only because I know you worked with Ashley, so I know you were able to engage in a lot of these really great reflective opportunities with your teams. Okay. I was going to see Amanda's. Okay, Jennifer, how can we get a copy of the slide deck? We actually didn't upload it to Wova, but I will share a website that Julie and I have that has a lot of different resources. We have some different resources in regards to ways to help build agency amongst your teachers and on your staff, some reflective questions. We'll obviously have this slide deck and some of the other different resources that I've just shared with you into the chat. Yes, Julie just said that. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to go up. Amanda, you had a question, and I don't know if you're still here. How do we make teachers comfortable so that they can understand how self-reflection can help students grow? Okay, so this is a great question, Amanda, and actually I've been mentoring a couple of different coaches and coordinators lately, and this is one that comes up time and time again. And I think just like any skill, right? So think about reading or phonics, right? And we are trying to coach our teachers on how to teach reading skills or phonics or whatnot, or different math strategies. You do it through modeling. So if you as the leader are modeling that reflective practice, then your teachers are seeing how it's done, right? And so if you are continuing to model those open-ended sentence stems, or answering a question with another question, or even just showing that you're curious about what's being shared and not necessarily looking for the answer, right? Because a lot of the times when we're listening for the answer that we want to hear, or that like the answer to the question. And so a lot of the times I would let new coordinators know, hey, just wait and listen and see what comes up. So I'd say model, model, model. I know it sounds so simple, but I would say time and time again, it's super powerful. And even on the campus that I'm now, so it's only I will be going into my 3rd year. The teachers know, even through this year of COVID, when I've like had limited access to them, they already know this about me, that I'm going to stop and pause and ask them another question. They know that I'm going to probably throw a thinking routine their way. And so I just say, model it until it becomes the culture. And it was not something that happened overnight on our campus. It was something that we had to be very intentional in doing. And to get prepared in that way and have myself feel comfortable, what I would do is I would just literally take a sticky note and I'd stick that sticky note wherever I was working, and just like have that as like my go-to instead of answering their question with an answer. So I'd say model. Okay, so I'm looking at a few more questions, but Julie just threw up a resources slide. Like I said, there's a lot. And again, those of you who know me, I'm all about the resources. To me, they provoke my own thinking and I get excited about it. I use Pocket to like tag and save all the things, even if I don't know I'll be using it next. We threw a ton of people for social media that I highly suggest that you go follow. We're up here as well. So those of you who want to continue the conversation, we'd love to continue the conversation. I can't tell you how many educators will continue to reach out, and I just love to just continue to engage in that way. That collaboration is huge for me. Connection is one of my core values, so I definitely invite that. Thank you, Jennifer. We have a couple of different hashtags that would be great for you to kind of follow and continue your learning in that way. And then our website, Leading with Inquiry, like I said, has a bunch of different things. This year, Julie and I are really excited. We're going to be blogging each month, although we have different perspectives and different roles around similar concepts in regards to agency and inquiry. So we're kind of curious to see how what's happening on our separate campuses unfolds and be sharing our learning. And, you know, we'll throw in a lot of great reflection questions because, you know, that's what you do. And then lastly, what's on our bookshelf? What are things that inspire us and that I keep going back to? I've mentioned several of these. One of them that I didn't talk about this time, but is definitely one, people who are new to questioning and don't know how to do it, Just Make One Change has a questioning routine called the question formation technique that is so powerful. We engage our teachers utilizing that, and our teachers use it in their classroom. So infusing questions in that way. Julie threw up there the Principal Kafele, his newest book that's up there as well. So even if you are not a principal, his messaging is so great and so inspirational. So I definitely suggest you check those out. Obviously, Trevor McKenzie, we've spoken very highly of him as well. He has a lot of great resources, and those are the Making Thinking Visible texts. So we will be hanging out. I just wanted to say thank you all so very much for spending your morning with us. Obviously, I'm very passionate about what I do and how I lead teachers and how I continue to connect with other educators. And hopefully today, I shifted your thinking in a little bit. And even if it's just one thing and one takeaway, and you've started to reflect yourself about your approach and your role, that's my goal. And so hopefully you leave today inspired and you bring that to your campuses as we are all walking away or walking into a new learning environment with great lessons over the past year. And so why not start this year differently? Why not? So it's an opportunity. Thank you so much. I will be hanging out here. Yes, Julie, yes, have a great reflective year for a few more minutes. So if you have something you want to ask or just say hello or throw something into the chat, we'll hang out with you for a few more minutes.
All right, I'm going to formally end it and ask that if you have a moment, we'd love your feedback to keep our conference relevant. So at the bottom of the session where you logged in, there should be a link for feedback if you wouldn't mind clicking that when you have some free time today. And I'd like to thank Jessica and Julie for your time and commitment in this session. It was awesome. I took lots of notes, so I look forward to reflecting on my notes and taking to Twitter. I'm really active on Twitter. I shared one of the questions that you asked at the beginning, would you want to be a learner in your classroom? And it already has some activity on it. So I'm going to suggest that everyone get on Twitter, get on their webpage. And yes, so thank you all for attending, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you guys. Thank you.